Fun එක next level කරන dialogue fan blaster.
On First at 9 this Thursday, the 5th of December 2024. Vote on account. Vote on account for the first 4 months of next year tabled in Parliament. Government seeks to raise the borrowing limit to 4 trillion rupees. No more favourites. No more political favouritism when granting investment opportunities, assures the President. BOI will have complete autonomy. High stakes touchdown. US Assistant Secretary of State Donald Lu arrives in Sri Lanka. Deputy Assistant Secretary to the Treasury Robert Capro meets the Finance Secretary.
Chilo Dairy Sri Lankawama Kiren Perata. ඔබේ විශ්වාසය දෙනු සෙන්සුරයින් දැන් ළඟමැති ෆාමසියෙන් ලබාගත හැක.
කන්ට පරිස්සම් කරගත්තොත් අපි පරිස්සම්.
Asian Paints Causeway Aquasave වැස්සත් මට්ටුයි ගෙදරත් තිස්නේ.
This is Derana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to Sri Lanka's premier primetime English news bulletin, Derana First at 9. I'm Tarindu Mahendra, joining you live with the latest in Sri Lanka and from around the world. Now, the Lanka Tamil Arasu Katchi has submitted its proposal for a power-sharing mechanism in a merged North and East under a federal constitution. Addressing media following a meeting with the head of state, ITAC MP Shanakyan Rasamanickam claimed that the President agreed to allow the issue to be raised during the drafting of the new constitution. President Anura Dissanayake met with the parliamentary group of the Lanka Tamil Arasu Katchi last evening at the Presidential Secretariat. Following the meeting, ITAC MP Shanakyan Rasamanickam addressed media.
Primarily, we discussed about power sharing arrangements, power devolution, and we put forward ITAC's proposal for a power sharing mechanism in a merged North and East under a federal structure. And we discussed about the issue of missing persons, and we have reiterated that we would need a accountability mechanism that has a judicial part to it as well, with the involvement of foreign judges. So to both these requests, the President informed us that the government has still not come up with a work plan on these two issues. And with regards to the constitution, at the time when a new constitution is being drafted, that we can raise these issues about power sharing and about the accountability and the judicial mechanism for crimes against humanity, etc. The Office of Missing Persons is still functional. However, we informed him that the Office of Missing Persons is not adequate and people don't have trust in it without a judicial mechanism. So therefore, he has promised us that we can discuss further on this issue. We have also raised various land issues, including the Mahavali Authority, the Archaeology Department, the Forest Department, Coast Conservation Department, many state machinery that was land-related issues in the North and East, and he has promised to look into these issues as well. We discussed about some development requirements in the North and East, and the President has promised to give the decentralized budget to both the government MPs and the MPs from the opposition. We have also requested for a special additional fund for MPs from the North and East, since the North and the East was severely affected by the war. The issue of the political prisoners was also raised, and we have asked the President to release the political prisoners or enlarge them on bail for now till the court cases are over. And the President also agreed that if they are convicted of these crimes, the period they've spent in jail may even exceed the sentence that they may receive. The President said that he will speak to the Attorney General's department on this issue.
Union Assurance.
Welcome to Cinnamon Life, South Asia's biggest entertainment hub, where awe awaits.
චන්දරුසුනේ කාගෙන් බලා බෙස්සිග TV සඳහා සුපිරි ඩීල්.
Sadaharita Plantations Limited, celebrating 22 years of your trust.
Meanwhile, President Anura Dissanayake is of the view that Sri Lanka has been able to create an environment conducive to investment through the country's recently achieved political stability. During a meeting with officials of the Board of Investment, the head of state assured that political favoritism will no longer play a part in granting investment opportunities and that the BOI would be granted autonomy to attract beneficial investments. Meanwhile, during a meeting with heads of media institutions, the president stated that the government will not allow any party to destroy the unity of Sri Lankan people by creating conflicts among different ethnicities. During a meeting with officials of the Board of Investment at the Presidential Secretariat today, President Anura Dissanayake, while emphasizing that there will no longer be any political influence in granting new investment opportunities, assured that the BOI would be granted full autonomy to attract investments that are beneficial to the country. The President further stressed that the BOI must remain committed to fulfilling its assigned duties effectively and announced that the upcoming budget would prioritize provisions to enhance its efficiency. The head of state also revealed that plans are in place to establish 5 new investment zones across the country next year. Meanwhile, during a separate meeting with officials of the Department of Excise, President Anura Dissanayake urged them to follow formal procedures when issuing excise licenses. The discussion also focused on the deficiencies in the legislation pertaining to the collection of excise duties and the implementation of novel procedures such as the cancellation of the licenses of blacklisted institutions and institutions that are unable to pay duties. While highlighting that the people are displeased of the Excise Department's conduct, the President urged officials to adhere to the law at all times. In the meantime, the President attended another meeting with the heads of electronic media organizations. The event was attended by members of the Sri Lanka Broadcasters Guild along with senior officials including heads of electronic media institutions, group directors, chief executive officers and general managers.
අපි හිතන්නේ ආණ්ඩුවත් මාධ්‍යත් අතර යම් යහපත් සබඳතාවයක් තිබිය යුතුයි කියලා.
We believe that a good relationship must exist between the government and media. We are not suggesting that the media should be biased towards the government. However, we believe that a cognizant intervention should be established between the government and the media. One of the controversial issues I will highlight is related to the Mahavir commemoration. In fact, a circular published in 2011 provided the opportunity for people to hold these events. When this circular was issued, several criteria were introduced, including a ban on the use of LTTE symbols. In 2022, these commemoration events were held in 121 locations, with approximately 52,000 people participating. In 2023, these events took place in 159 locations with around 64,267 participants, according to police reports. In 2024, the events were held in 144 locations with 45,778 participants. However, I have seen reports claiming that this has never happened before. This is completely false, as it was permitted by the 2011 circular. The northern and eastern provinces and the south are geographically distant. However, we believe that the people of these provinces united during the last election for a common goal. Attempts to destroy the unity among communities will not be tolerated, and we will enact laws if the existing ones are insufficient. We made these decisions after thorough discussions because we are committed to preventing the resurgence of racism.
මේ නීති මන්දි නම් නීති හදනවා. හිතා මතාම සාකච්ඡා කරලම ගත්ත තීන්දුව. මොකද ජාතිවාදී සොස්වන්න දෙන්න ඕනේ නැහැ කියන ස්ථාවර අපි ඉන්නේ.
Fast track your career from O levels with eSoft.
ඩයබටිසෝල් සීනි වලින් පරිස්සම් වන ඔබට අමතක නොවන පෝෂණය.
ප්‍රයිම් ගෲප් ලංකාවේ ප්‍රථම වතාවට හඳුන්වා දෙන ලෑන්ඩ් ලීසින් ලේසියෙන් මීටමක්.
Single 1111 up to 60% off from the 11th November to the 17th of November.
Kalani wire කිසිගින්නක් නැහැ.
කිසිගින්නක් නැහැ. Kalani Fire Shield Wire.
Meanwhile, the government presented the vote on account to Parliament for its first reading. Accordingly, the two-day debate on the vote on account began today. The account estimates total government expenditure at 2.6 trillion rupees, while revenue projections are set at 1.6 trillion rupees. Through the vote on account, the government is seeking permission for an initial borrowing limit of 1 trillion rupees. The resolution also requests authorization to raise up to 4 trillion rupees either locally or internationally in the event of delays in the debt restructuring process. The vote on account for the first 4 months of 2025 has allocated 1.402 trillion rupees to sustain government operations and ongoing projects. An additional 1.175 trillion is earmarked for debt servicing, including interest payments, installments and foreign debt restructuring. The total government expenditure for this period is estimated at 2.6 trillion rupees, while revenue projection stands at 1.6 trillion. To address potential uncertainties caused by delays in the debt restructuring process, the borrowing limit has been raised to 4 trillion rupees. Among these allocations, the Ministry of Transport, Highways, Ports and Civil Aviation receives the highest amount of 220.6 billion rupees. Other notable allocations include 186.02 billion rupees for the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, 170.47 billion for Public Administration and Local Government, 161.99 billion for Health and Mass Media, 142.95 billion for Defence, 92 billion for Education and Vocational Training, and 67.36 billion for Agriculture and Irrigation.
Since there are no alternative means to secure funds required for government operations, we are compelled to present a vote on account and obtain parliamentary approval. We are bound by the IMF agreement in a way that limits our ability to make unilateral changes. However, as outlined in our manifesto, we are negotiating within this framework to address specific sectors. These discussions have been productive and we have reached a staff-level agreement. We anticipate receiving the executive level decision by February next year. It is important to note that some economic activities may not proceed as planned. However, we are optimistic that increased investments will materialize. By the end of the year, we expect to emerge from the bankruptcy status and improve our credit rating by 2025. As part of the agreements with the ISB holders, we must issue new treasury bonds. We aim to complete this process by the end of December. However, if technical delays push this by a week or two, that is why we propose increase in the borrowing limit to 4 trillion rupees.
You are requesting approval to borrow 4 trillion rupees through local and foreign loans. Yet you once claimed that you could run the country without debt, supposedly by bringing in funds from Uganda or through some magical means. Now through this vote on account, you are asking for the same 4 trillion. From January to April 2024, the allocation for former President Ranil Wickremesinghe stood at 1.4 trillion rupees. For 2025, the same amount has been allocated for President Anura Dissanayake. Where is the promised reduction in expenses? The system remains unchanged, but Anura has changed. Moreover, the President stated that the ISB agreement cannot be altered as the terms have been finalized. Yet the deal has not been signed. It is scheduled for the 12th of December. Why are you proceeding with this agreement?
It was your government that took on the burden of ISB borrowing in 2021, amassing $17 billion at the highest interest rates. Now we are left to bear the burden to pay the interest on these loans. Honorable Speaker, no government uses all the funds allocated through a vote on account. It is a provisional measure for estimated expenses until the budget is passed. We are debating allocations, not actual expenditures. When President Dissanayake took office, he set an example for the nation. Funds remain in the treasury. The situation would have been different if it was Ranil or Sajid. Regarding the payments to Clifford and Chance, who hired them in the first place, if we terminate their service and hire another firm, we face the risk of legal action. Who will bear the cost of those legal fees? While we may have commitments we don't prefer, we are legally bound to honor them.
Despite what was said on the political stage, we must acknowledge the efforts of President Dissanayake to advance former President Wickremesinghe's IMF agreement. There is no alternative. While this path may be difficult in the short term, it is necessary for long-term stability. We must strengthen the economy through consistent effort. There are no shortcuts to this process. Let us not stray from this path but continue forward.
Making Wamada signal dala dakurinda herinde pa. Me yana gamana yanna.
The Sri Lankan Embassy in Lebanon, in association with the International Organization for Migration, has successfully evacuated a total of 55 vulnerable Sri Lankan workers from Lebanon. The most recent group of 26 arrived in Colombo last evening. Sri Lankan Ambassador in Lebanon, Kapila Jayavira, stated that 7 more Sri Lankans are currently on standby to be evacuated. According to Ambassador Jayavira, the group was selected in collaboration with IOM after carefully screening the most vulnerable individuals in Lebanon. Praising the IOM support in facilitating the evacuation of these vulnerable Sri Lankans, Ambassador Jayavira further expressed his hope to continue working together to assist those in need despite the challenging situation in Lebanon. The US Department of the Treasury's Deputy Assistant Secretary for Asia, Robert Capro, met with the Secretary to the Ministry of Finance, Mahinda Sirivardhana. US Ambassador to Sri Lanka, Julie Chang, who also participated in the meeting, said discussions focused on how the United States can support Sri Lanka's economic reforms and growth goals. The US Ambassador added that they explored opportunities for stronger US-Sri Lanka collaboration to strengthen fiscal resilience. Meanwhile, the United States Assistant Secretary of State for the Bureau of South and Central Asian Affairs, Donald Liu, arrived in Sri Lanka earlier this morning. Liu's visit to Sri Lanka follows his trip to India earlier this week, and he is set to conclude his Asian tour in Nepal. The US Assistant Secretary of State is expected to meet with senior Sri Lankan government officials to deepen ties with the new government, support its efforts to combat corruption, and explore how the United States can support Sri Lanka's governance and economic reform agenda through tailored technical assistance, capacity building, and development programs. Meanwhile, the US Embassy in Sri Lanka recently celebrated the 20th anniversary of the English Access Scholarship Program, which has empowered over 1,300 youth in Sri Lanka since its launch. The program, initiated by the US Department of State in 2004, provides economically struggling students aged 13 to 15 years with free English language education, leadership training, and exposure to US culture and democratic values through a 2-year curriculum. US Ambassador Julie Chang highlighted the program's role in empowering youth and fostering cross-cultural understanding. It has also strengthened English teaching in Sri Lanka and created connections among students and teachers from diverse backgrounds. The embassy has planned a special 4-day camp in Kandy, which will bring together 150 access students and teachers from various regions of Sri Lanka for interactive sessions, a community service project, and a culture night. The US Embassy will continue to offer the Access program, enrolling 150 new students for the 2025-27 cycle. Administrative Secretary of the Sri Lanka Podu Jana Peramuna, Renuka Pereira, was arrested earlier today for his social media posts regarding Mahavir commemorations. However, he was later released on bail after being produced before the Colombo Additional Magistrate. Meanwhile, former State Minister Lohan Ratwatte and his wife, who were arrested on charges of using a luxury car that was illegally imported and assembled in Sri Lanka, were also released on bail. Former State Minister Lohan Ratwatte and his wife Shashi Prabha Ratwatte were granted bail today by the Nugegoda Magistrates Court. The couple was arrested on charges of using a luxury car that was illegally imported and assembled in Sri Lanka. They were released on 2 cash bails of 25,000 rupees each and 2 personal bonds of 1 million rupees each. Additionally, the court imposed a foreign travel ban on the former State Minister. Meanwhile, Sri Lanka Podu Jana Peramuna Administrative Secretary Renuka Pereira was arrested earlier today for sharing videos related to Mahavir commemorations. Subsequently, Pereira was produced before Colombo Additional Magistrate Manjula Ratnayaka, who ordered him to be released on bail. Accordingly, Renuka Pereira was released on 2 surety bonds of 1 million rupees each. In the meantime, the Department of Excise officially sealed the production facility of WM Mendes and Company Limited in Valley Saranagada today due to the company's default on 3.5 billion rupees in value-added tax payments. On the 14th of October, the Colombo Magistrates Court sentenced the company's director Arjuna Aloysius and 2 others to 6 months in prison over the matter. Today, the Superintendent of Excise in Gampaha, Primesh Fernando, and the Superintendent of Excise in Jaela, LPS Jaishankar, announced that WM Mendes and Company Limited is prohibited from producing or distributing its products from today. Welcome back. The Colombo Bourse closed in positive territory today, aided by price gains in counters such as Commercial Bank, Sampath Bank and Melster Corp. The all share price index closed 0.35% higher at 13,559.41 points, while the S&P SL20 increased 0.91% to end at 4,053.03 points. Market turnover crossed 4.4 billion rupees. The banking sector was the top contributor to market turnover, followed by the capital goods sector. Foreign investors closed as net buyers, purchasing shares worth 259 million rupees. And with that, here's a look at the rupee exchange rate for the day. And with that, here's a look at the corporate news segment for the day. People's Leasing and Finance PLC recently published its financial performance for the first 6 months of the financial year 2024-25, ending on the 30th of September 2024. The company reported an income of 12.676 billion rupees, resulting in a profit of 1.566 billion rupees, a 42.4% increase in profitability compared to the same period last year. During the period under review, the company's loans and receivables portfolio grew by 9.9%, resulting in total assets rising to 147.559 billion rupees. Meanwhile, in a stock market disclosure, Lion Brewery Ceylon PLC revealed plans to boost exports with the aid of a newly constructed plant where new products will be developed and tested targeting foreign markets. Chief Executive of the company, Rajiv Meewakkala, said the company expects to boost exports to $35 million or 20% of its output over the next 5 years. Its current exports to the Maldives, Middle East and East Africa are worth about $20 million. In other corporate news, Demo Academy, the vocational training arm of Demo, announced its partnership with HomeServe Germany, a heating, ventilation and air conditioning company offering installation, home repair, maintenance and insurance services. This partnership aims to strengthen vocational education in Sri Lanka by providing assured job placements in the German construction industry for local youth with globally recognized qualifications. Under this collaboration, Demo Academy will offer a qualification based on German vocational standards, leading to a German diploma in plant engineering accredited by the German Chamber of Industry and Commerce. And with that, we wrap up tonight's edition of First at 9. Thank you for joining and have a good night.